Hey everyone, I want to tell you about Cozy Earth. It's the world's softest sheets. They keep you cool, dry, and comfy all night long. They're moisture wicking, breathable, and they even get softer with every wash. They have PJ sets. Who can't get behind PJ sets? Valentine's is coming up. Get your wife a pajama set. It's Oprah approved. They have free shipping on orders over $50 and a 100-night sleep trial on those bedding sets and a 10-year warranty. And right now, our listeners get to save 40% off using our code INFOGO at CozyEarth.com. Find the link in the show notes. Luxury, comfort, and cool sleep await you at CozyEarth.com. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William.
And I'm Kat,
And that makes this Info on the Go.
feeding your curiosity with every show.
So, Kat, I know that you know what a satellite is up in Earth's orbit, right?
Yes.
But did you know that space garbage is a huge problem?
Really?
Yeah. Space isn't empty anymore. And what we left up there may decide the future of satellites, exploration, and even daily life here on Earth.
So a satellite silently circling Earth at 17,500 miles per hour, which is fast enough to cross the United States in minutes. No engine noise, there's no warning lights, just aluminum, solar panels, and computers skimming the thin edge of space.
Yeah, it's an invisible minefield.
Oof.
So just think about this, a fragment no bigger than a paint chip, a flake of old rocket casing. It slams into metal, but at orbital speed, and remember that 17,000 miles per hour, it doesn't bounce. It punches through and it releases the same kinetic energy as a high caliber bullet, sometimes even more.
So space feels vast, but low Earth orbit is one of the most crowded environments humans have ever created.
There's more than hundreds of thousands of tracked objects and millions of untrackable fragments, and they're circling above you and I and whoever's listening to this podcast right now.
Most debris is too small to see, too fast to dodge, and too deadly to ignore.
One collision can trigger thousands more, setting off a cascading chain reaction known as Kessler Syndrome, where orbit becomes a self-sustaining junkyard.
There's no cleanup crew in space, and everything we've ever launched there was still there. It's waiting, just waiting to hit something.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess really, before we get too deep into it, I guess we'll kind of excribe. I guess before,
Describe.
yeah. So I guess before we get too deep into it, I guess we'll kind of tell you what space junk is. And the plain definition for that is space junk is anything humans put into orbit that we're no longer using. It doesn't shut off, it doesn't fall down, it just keeps going again and again around Earth.
So what counts as space junk? That's dead satellites, which machines that ran out of fuel, power, or funding. There's rocket bodies, the big metal tubes that pushed spacecraft into orbit and were left behind. There's detached boosters and panels, parts that break off during launch or even operation. Lost tools, even. Astronauts have dropped wrenches, gloves, and even a camera during spacewalks. Not all of us are perfect, okay?
No.
All right. This and then the small stuff. There's paint chips, metal flakes, bolts, shattered glass from past collisions.
You know, if I was in space and working on something, I would definitely drop it at least 5 times. Oh man, there it goes. I need another one. Oh, there it
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, no, I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not gonna drop it.
I would probably have to tie a string around it and then tie the string around me. That way I can pull it back to me and be like, oh, here's my adjustable
That's
wrench.
that's the only way because I know I drop it. Or just, thinking just forget about no gravity and set it down. Okay.
Um, but every time we launch, we add something else, and every time something breaks up, it adds thousands of new pieces. So size, well, it does matter, and smaller doesn't really mean it's safer. You know, big debris are tracked. And we're talking something about the size of a softball or a little bit larger. Grapefruit, maybe, if for those of you that don't know what a softball is, or orange, or, you know. These are watched from the ground because, they're big enough for us to see. Well, not see, but be able to be tracked. And we can sometimes move satellites out of their way so that they're not like hit with it.
Then there's medium debris, which is the worst kind. It's about marble to fist sized. It's too small to track reliably, but big enough to destroy a satellite on impact. So this is the most dangerous category.
And then you have tiny debris, which is micro junk, and it's smaller than a grain of rice. It's impossible to track, and it's still moving faster than a rifle bullet, and it can punch holes in metal and windows. Man, could you imagine, like, if you're an astronaut or if you're like one of these things just punching right through a satellite, or like,
No,
yeah.
that sounds terrible.
I think, what did we say space travel was? It was like 17,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, that's what everything's traveling at. I can't imagine. That sounds terrifying.
yeah.
So, but why does the speed change everything? Nothing in orbit is drifting. Everything is moving at thousands of miles per hour. And at that speed, a paint fleck hits like a BB gun, a bolt hits like a grenade, and a satellite collision hits like an explosion.
Imagine Earth's orbit as well a shooting gallery, if you will, where the targets are always moving and every bullet never slows down. And once the shot is fired, well, it just keeps flying forever. That is space junk. So no matter what you're shooting at, like it could be this target, but it's constantly moving. So it might hit something that you didn't even intentionally aim for. Or what if something was to fly in its way? Like it's kind of scary if you think about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. Astronaut was never going to be my job. It sounded cool, but I'll watch it from the comfort of my couch. Um, and
I love
I
space.
commend those that I mean I love space. I I don't really want to go see it unless I really have to.
I couldn't
But
do it because I get motion sick really bad. So yeah, I couldn't do the spinning thing. So
you just have to knock me out or I'm going to scream the whole time.
I would do it if I thought I could get away with, the motion, because I can just see in my head I would be the guy that would be like, "Where's the barf bag?"
Oh yeah.
and
Mm-mm.
and be just terrible the entire time that I was up there and ruin it for everybody that was with me.
Oh jeez. Well anyway, how did we get here? So the early space mindset, space is endless. Well, in 1957, the Soviet Union launches Sputnik, which was a metal ball the size of a beach ball. It stays in orbit for about 3 months when it finally burns up in the atmosphere. No one is tracking where it goes or what it leaves behind. At the time, fewer than a dozen objects were in orbit. Space felt as empty as the open ocean. The idea of space traffic or even orbital pollution didn't exist. So the assumption was simple: anything we launch will either work forever or fall back down eventually. And that assumption was wrong.
By the 1960s and the 1970s, which was the Cold War, era, the US and the Soviet Union were launching hundreds of rockets. And the design priorities were very clear. Get the payload up, beat the other side, worry about nothing after separation. And as a result of that, upper rocket stages were left drifting in orbit. Some were the size of school buses, and most still contained leftover fuel and pressurized tanks. So, no rules required anyone to drain fuel, disarm batteries, or bring hardware back down. So, once launch succeeded, well, all of that leftover stuff, well, it was just abandoned in Earth's orbit.
Uh, then there's the accidental explosions, time bombs in space, if you will. This is this was the biggest early mistake, and nobody even realized it yet. Old rockets and satellites often held liquid fuel that slowly leaked and evaporated, contained batteries that degraded over time, or were exposed to extreme temperature swings from sun-baked heat to deep freeze cold. And years later, sometimes 20 or 30 years after launch, tanks cracked, fuel ignited, and batteries ruptured. These weren't dramatic Hollywood explosions, but in space, even a small breakup is devastating. One object can shatter into hundreds of trackable fragments, thousands of smaller, invisible pieces, even. And each one becomes a new bullet in orbit.
Man, a new bullet in orbit. Dang, that's pretty graphic.
Hmm.
What about military testing? Well, this just made everything worse because during the Cold War era, well, both superpowers tested anti-satellite weaponry. Satellites were deliberately destroyed to prove military capability. Well, think about it that. Each test turned one target into clouds of debris, spread fragments across busy orbital lanes, created junk that can stay afloat for decades or longer. Well, and the test ended, but the debris, it didn't. They're still there.
No gravity to clean up the mess. On Earth, junk eventually falls down. In orbit, nothing slows things down. Some debris will stay up 10 years, 50 years, hundreds of years, just depending on the altitude, really. There's no wind, no friction, no natural cleanup. Everything just keeps circling Earth over and over.
So
Right.
what we're talking about is like satellites that we have up there for GPS or whatever. What if it gets hit with some of this stuff? I mean,
Okay. I got it.
yeah, okay.
Tracking.
For decades, space junk was treated as a minor issue, a future problem, somebody else's responsibility. But by the time scientists started tracking the debris seriously, there was already way too much up there.
Well, space junk wasn't caused by one bad launch, one careless country, or even one accident. It was caused by decades of rushed launches, Cold War shortcuts, exploding leftovers, and the belief that space was too big to mess up.
It sounds like a true human philosophy there. Oh, the ocean is too big for us to junk it up. Let's pile our garbage in there. Oh,
It's definitely very human nature to us trying to get rid of things we're not sure how to get rid of and hiding it under the rug.
yeah. Until you got to move that rug, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah, man. So you got to clean it up. In any case, we did not fill the orbit all at once. We filled it piece by piece and never cleaned up after ourselves.
So let's get into the Kessler syndrome. But before we do that, we need to know who Donald J. Kessler was. And in 1978, a NASA scientist, Donald J. Kessler, noticed a scary pattern. He realized that space could reach a tipping point where debris collision could spiral well, out of control. And he had a warning. One accident in orbit isn't just a one off. Each collision produces thousands of fragments, and those fragments increase the chance of more collisions. And a chain reaction could eventually make certain orbital paths nearly impossible to use.
How does this all work? Well, a collision happens. Say a dead satellite hits a rocket booster, then thousands of pieces break off, everything from big chunks to tiny shards of metal. Fragments fly at thousands of miles per hour. Each one is a tiny bullet. Other satellites or junk get hit, creating even more debris. The cycle keeps repeating and accelerating over time. Think of it like a snowball rolling downhill. Once it starts, it gets bigger and faster.
Mhm. That sounds terrifying. Entire orbits could become unusable. Satellites that help with GPS, weather, communications, well, they rely on these safe orbital lanes. You know, some debris, well, they don't just burn up in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. So even tiny fragments can be deadly. A flake of paint the size of a rice grain can puncture spacecraft windows or satellite panels. Can cause some real damage there.
In 2009, an inactive Russian satellite collided with a working Iridium communications satellite, and that single crash produced over 2,000 trackable pieces of debris. Each one became a potential bullet for other satellites, which is a mini Kessler event in real life.
Hmm. So imagine a massive traffic pileup, right? Cars moving at 17,500 miles per hour. No brakes, no tow trucks, no police. Every new crash throws more cars into the highway. That's orbit if the Kessler Syndrome takes hold. Man, I just can't even wrap my head around that.
Me either. It's oof.
It's pretty bad. But how bad is it?
The numbers are staggering. Right now, space is full of junk. Tens of thousands of tracked objects, satellites, rocket bodies, big fragments, millions of untracked pieces, small metal shards, paint flecks, and bolts flying faster than a rifle bullet. And it keeps growing every year.
Yeah, the lure, the low Earth orbit or LEO, from about 100 to 1,200 miles above Earth, and it's home to most satellites, including the ISS and the Starlink internet satellites. And this is where debris moves faster and collisions are most likely. The geostationary orbit, or the GEO, which is about 2,200 miles up, satellites here park above the same spot on Earth, and there are only a limited number of safe spots. Even small debris can cause major disruptions because satellites are expensive and critical for communications.
There's even near misses you've never heard about. Space junk isn't just theoretical. Astronauts and engineers deal with it all the time. The International Space Station has had to change its orbit dozens of times to avoid collisions. Satellites routinely perform evasive maneuvers using fuel to dodge debris, and even tiny fragments less than a centimeter wide can damage critical instruments.
Why does this really matter? Every time a satellite moves or an astronaut dodges debris, well, it costs millions of dollars. And space agencies that track hundreds or thousands of pieces every day, and the debris is not going away anytime soon. So most of it will stay in orbit for decades or even centuries.
We are already spending millions just to avoid our own trash, and the mess is only getting worse. Orbit isn't infinite, it's crowded. I- It's a crowded, high speed junkyard, and we're the ones who made it.
Yeah, and I think we should take a small break here before we get into, the rest of this. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
William, I know how you love matcha tea with coconut milk.
Yeah, it's clean energy without a crash.
Then you'll love Mantra Matcha. They offer super premium ceremonial matcha and six superfood infused flavors made from the finest, youngest tea leaves for a naturally sweet, ultra smooth taste.
With each flavor, it's infused with powerful superfoods like cacao, ginger, and goji berries. And they also have those classic favorites like banana cacao, strawberry lemon, cinnamon goji berry, plus superfood berry, ginger beet, and rosehip dragon fruit. It's organic, non GMO, gluten free with 0 grams of sugar. You can enjoy it like me, or maybe hot or in a smoothie like Cat. Every purchase helps provide meals to kids through No Kid Hungry.
It's at mantramatcha.com. Get 15% off using our code INFOGO at checkout. Both links are in the show notes.
Hey, everybody, we want to tell you about strong coffee. Every morning it starts with a choice. You can settle for just coffee, or you can rise up with strong coffee. And it's the world's strongest cup of joe. Strong isn't just a drink, it's a movement. It stands for striving to reach our natural greatness.
It's born from one simple need to be better. They rebuilt coffee from the ground up, infusing organic coffee with collagen, protein, nootropics, and functional ingredients that fuel your body and sharpen your mind. No crash, no compromises, just clean energy, focus, and flavor that fires you up.
Yeah, so whether you're chasing kids, chasing goals, or chasing greatness, don't Don't just do it with coffee, do it with strong coffee. And our listeners can save 20% off just by using our code INFOGO at checkout. Hey, if you're looking for your favorite band or sports team or TV show, check out Old Glory. They've been in operation since 1969 and they have over 300,000 items. They have from the Beatles all the way to Metallica, NFL, NBA. It really doesn't matter what you're looking for. They have tees, hoodies, hats, gifts, everything a true fan could ever want. And it's family owned and operated. They have fast shipping, free standard delivery on every order. And you know what? Our listeners get a 15% off at checkout using our code INFOGO. You can find the link in the show notes. So, so the real question is, why should you care? Well, everyday life really depends on space. You might not notice it, but space junk affects all of us. Think about GPS navigation, driving directions, ride share apps, even your phone maps really rely on satellites circling thousands of miles above you. Weather forecasting, satellites that track storms, hurricanes, and floods before they ever hit us. Internet and communications, satellite, satellite internet, phone calls, TV signals. Well, they all depend on a clear orbital path. Banking and finance, the exact timestamps on every transactions come from the atomic clocks in space. And disaster tracking. Satellites detect wildfires, droughts, and earthquakes. So think about it. If satellites stopped working properly, all of this would be affected, and we would basically go back to the time before phones.
All right. Now, that said banking and finance. I don't know about anybody else, but let's clean up the mess because I don't want it messing with my money. I don't know. Anybody else feel the same way? Let us
Yeah.
know.
I mean, think about all the other stuff though, like the weather forecasting, being able to track hurricanes and floods. I mean, you definitely just went through that. I mean, and people that have floods, like, how do you have those safety warnings in place? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have known the hurricane was right over my head had I not had a tracking app. So,
yeah,
uh, mm, being in the know is very helpful.
I would agree with that.
There is cascading consequences too. Space junk isn't just mess in orbit, it has real world ripple effects. One destroyed satellite can trigger, really? One destroyed satellite can trigger outages across services from GPS to weather alerts. Insurance costs for satellites are already rising as collisions become more likely. As space access could become limited. Only the richest nations might afford to launch safely, leaving smaller countries locked out. So, new debris makes future missions riskier, slowing down science, communications, and even exploration.
So the bottom line is space junk isn't just a sci-fi problem. It's reality. And the devices and services we take for granted, navigation, communication, banking, disaster warnings, all of this, it depends on safe, clean orbits. So every piece of junk orbiting Earth threatens the systems we rely on every day.
Now, who's responsible here? Well, most of the debris in orbit comes from a few key players: the United States, decades of launches, military tests, and even abandoned rocket stages. And then, of course, you have the Russia and Soviet legacy, old satellites and spent boosters from the Cold War era missions. And in China, including deliberate anti satellite tests that created thousands of fragments. And over in Europe, contributions from the ESA missions and launches. Not really any one person's problem, it's everybody's problem. It's not just governments anymore. Commercial satellite companies now launch hundreds of satellites a year. Mega constellations like Starlink and OneWeb crowd low Earth orbit with thousands of small satellites. In 1967, Outer Space Treaty governs space activity, but it has no teeth for enforcement. It does not require anyone to remove debris, and no one is legally responsible if your satellite explodes in orbit. The ethical question: if you launch something into space and it becomes junk, do you own the mess forever, or is it free for all once it leaves your control? And this question is becoming urgent as orbit fills up.
I mean, think about this. I mean, there's a treaty, but it really doesn't do anything because, hey, do whatever you want to do because there's no way to enforce this.
Hmm.
But the big question is, can we clean it up? There's a lot of proposed solutions. Scientists and engineers have wild and clever ideas. Space nets and harpoons, literally catching debris like fishing it out of orbit. That one just, that one sounds, I don't know. Then what about robotic arms? When I'm thinking of this one, I'm thinking about the little arm where you're in the game room and you're trying to get the little stuffed animal, but it doesn't quite reach it or grab it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
I'm,
gotcha.
I'm thinking about that one. And then
Yeah.
drag cells with these are small parachutes that help satellites slow down and re-enter safely. Then you have lasers, which nudging tiny fragments to change their orbit so they fall back to Earth. But there's a problem with all of this. It costs money. So every cleanup mission costs millions to billions of dollars. And there's no immediate profit incentive, unlike launching satellites. Funding is mostly public or experimental, and it's just easier to stop new junk than remove old junk. So, why don't we design satellites to orbit at the end of their life? Maybe use fuel that doesn't explode and then plan end of life strategy. So, if a satellite's going to be old or linger for decades, maybe you have a way to get it back to Earth. But I think really, even with all this latest and greatest and best technology, cleaning space up, it's going to be hard. And keeping it clean, if we ever get it clean, I think keeping it clean would be much easier. So I think for every new satellite rocket stage or launch without a plan adds to the problem that's already massive. So to put that in perspective, if we could ever clean up space, cleaning it up is going to be hard, but keeping it clean, I think would be the easy part.
I hope so. Maybe one day we'll get there.
Yeah.
What must change to keep space usable for generations? There's international cooperation. No one country can clean up orbit alone. Binding debris mitigation rules. Governments and companies need enforceable laws, not just guidelines. Treating orbit as a shared environment, like oceans or air. It's a global commons that everyone depends on. There is some emerging hope, signs that change is possible. There are new standards. Organizations like the UN and space agencies are pushing rules for deorbiting satellites and limiting debris. The public, media, and investors are starting to notice that space junk affects daily life. In sustainability and mission design, companies are now designing satellites to self deorbit or burn up safely in the atmosphere. The big idea: space is no longer the final frontier. It's a shared neighborhood. Every launch, every satellite, and every fragment adds or subtracts from the safety of that neighborhood.
Around our planet is a thin shell of orbit, a narrow highway circling a fragile, life filled world. Every piece of debris moves faster than a rifle bullet, yet it depends on nothing but human choice. And so the irony of all of this is we left Earth seeking wonder, discovery, and freedom, and we brought out our worst habits, waste, neglect, and short term thinking. Hey, Kat, I say before we end this, let's bring it home like we like to do, right?
Yes.
All right.
How many satellites are in orbit today as of 2025? There are roughly 9,800 to 11,700 active satellites orbiting Earth as of mid 2025. These are satellites that are functioning and being used for communications, navigation, science, weather, etc.
Yeah. And total tracked objects, including inactive satellites, rocket bodies, and large debris. When you include dead satellites and large debris, well, the number tracked objects are that are over 10 centimeters across is well over 27,000.
Why does the range count? Different tracking databases like the Union of Concerned Scientists versus the U.S. Space Surveillance Network count things slightly different and update at different times.
So, what's driving the growth? I think we already know what it is. Massive internet satellite constellations like SpaceX's Starlink, with over 9,000 satellites launched so far, dominate the total count. Other constellations like Amazon's Project Kipper and China's planned Gawang network,
Sure.
yeah, are also beginning to add satellites.
How many satellites are expected to launch in the coming years? Well, there's no single fixed number, but multiple forecasts and industry projections point toward dramatic growth. In the next few years, the U.S. Space Development Agency alone plans to launch at least 72 new satellites by 2029 as part of defense and tracking networks. Mega constellation deployments are ongoing. Starlink has approval to launch up to 12,000 satellites, and longer term plans extend to 30,000. Amazon,
30,000 30,000 satellites.
yeah, yeah. Are we going to have a night sky anymore?
Yeah, I don't know.
It sounds cool and scary, I guess. Cool and not so cool all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we're going to have internet, but I think there's, with these I don't know. Again, uh, there's a problem. And maybe there's some solutions in bringing these satellites back home or back down to Earth or have them burn up in the orbit instead of just spinning up there and adding to the junk.
Or maybe they can help the junk. I,
Yeah.
I, I don't know. There's got to be a breaking point somewhere. Any case, Amazon's Project Kipper has 80 plus planned launches to build out its 3,200 satellite constellation.
And then there's long-term projections, that add up to 2030. A U.S. Government Accountability Office report projected that 18,000 or more satellites could be launched globally by 2030. Some industry analysts and researchers suggest that if all planned constellations proceed, the number of active satellites could rise toward tens of thousands, possibly even 100 or more before stabilizing. And market forecasts point to 3,700 plus launches per year on average through the 2020s. And this is equivalent to roughly 10 satellites launched per day worldwide. And this is driven by communications, Earth observations, and, well, altogether just networks.
You're telling me 100,000 or more satellites?
Yeah, and in satellite markets, I want to say that they projected something like 7 tons. Uh,
Of space stuff to be created out of all that?
yeah, I want to say they were saying that 7 tons of satellites would be launched daily on average for the next decade.
That's insane.
Yeah, and that's according to satellite markets. That's where I got that information from.
Well, why do these numbers matter? Even a single additional satellite adds to orbital traffic, increasing the chance of collisions and debris creation. Well, the vast majority of new satellites are in low Earth orbit, about 1,200 miles, which is also the region most crowded with debris already. The rapid growth of constellations means space traffic management and debris mitigation are becoming urgent priorities for space agencies and commercial operators alike.
Yeah, I think, as consumers consume, and I think as the markets tend to do when they're requiring, the newest, latest, greatest thing, and it requires you to be connected, it's going to require more satellites.
Absolutely.
Did you see the picture of all the satellites?
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of enamored with the picture of Earth, really. And then I was like, oh, look, the stuff.
Oh, there's stuff going around it.
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah, I was like, oh, there. Now that you're saying that it's satellites, I was like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense now. I just kind of looked at it and was like, okay, stuff.
Yeah, you can see some of the
The Earth
space
looks
junk
pretty.
too. Like, yeah, it looks
Right.
pretty until you start seeing all the stuff floating around it.
That's exactly what happened. I was like, oh, oh, oh no.
But I mean, I think if if companies and governments and people got serious about this, the cleanup, yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be probably harder than anything we have here on Earth. Absolutely. But in order for civilizations to keep building upon technology, it's going to have to happen at some point.
Right. And we also have to try to figure out a more sustainable way to dispose of the items we also have here on Earth.
Yeah. I mean, as humans like to do, we like to, well,
Hide it under the rug until we are forced to deal with it.
yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much
Ah,
all I've got on this one. I mean, I hoped we ended on a lighter note, maybe, I guess.
oh, it's kind of hard to end on a light note, but there is hope. We do have hope for the future. So there is that.
I think if we all followed that motto that hikers have, leave it better than you found it, the world and space would be a better place.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, that,
But,
that that's all I've
we
got.
don't live in a perfect world. So in any case, if you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help us keep the show going, you can do so at Patreon. You can find that link in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
Whether you've been with us from day one or just tuned in, thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go
Over there, you can share with us your show ideas.
or ask us a question.
But whatever you do, follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Send us a text using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
And leaving that review does help others find us. And I know Kat and I would love to read those. You can also email us
Info on the Go podcast at gmail.com.
and you can find that link in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.